Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Burbrink. I'm going to be your host today for the May 20th, 2025 edition of the Indiana Crop and Weather Biweekly Update. This morning, we're going to start out with our weather and climate update, and our speaker is Beth Hall. So, welcome, Beth. Good to have you this month or this week.
Hi,
We
thank
enjoyed
you.
having Austin, but we're glad to see you here too.
Thanks. It's hard to compete with Austin. I know that he does a great job with this. Okay, I'm just going to jump right in with an overview of temperature to start off. For the last 30 days, you can see with these three maps a lot of warm colors, which means that conditions were warmer than normal. All of these are departure from normal maps. So the one on the left is the average temperature departure over that 30-day period, and then the average minimum and maximum. So because they're all warm, that's telling us that there really wasn't any particular time of the day that was dominating the average. Certainly the daytime highs were a bit warmer than normal in the northern part of the state, and that's going to be a theme you'll probably see for a couple of these slides is northern Indiana has been acting and receiving weather a bit differently than southern Indiana. Speaking of temperature and with agriculture in particular, we often are interested in growing degree days. These are modified growing degree days, so it uses a two temperature threshold, the 50-degree base, and then the 86-degree cap. The map on the left, and these are accumulated since April 1st of this year. So the map on the left shows the total number of modified growing degree days that have accumulated since then, and the map on the right shows how that accumulation compares to what we normally see for the 1991 to 2020 period. So even though that departure map is showing some warmer colors, if you look at the legend, it's only talking about 20, 40, at best, maybe 60 units. And that doesn't seem like a lot. So I would probably characterize it so far this season, starting with April 1st, the temperatures have been very near normal. But now moving on to precipitation, this is the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map. Now, this was released last Thursday, and it is to take into consideration conditions through last Tuesday. So it is about a week old in terms of conditions. Later in this talk, I will show you what I just submitted to the national author for our recommendations across the state. But starting with this one, again, you can see that sort of north-south variation where the southern part of the state, all of the storms seem to be going through that area and dumping lots of precipitation. Even the rain events that we're seeing today, certainly the entire state is being impacted by it. But last I looked, northern locations were maybe getting around a half inch or more because the rain is still falling, which seems like a lot, and it definitely is a lot, but the southern part of the state has already received an inch of rain, so twice what the northern part has received. And that just seems to be the ongoing story throughout this whole season. These are maps, again, that's talking about or showing you the last 30 days, where the map on the far left is how much precipitation has fallen in that 30-day period as of yesterday. And just starting with that, you can see that, yeah, the whole state has received some precipitation in the 30 days, but that northern area is only received in that 1.5 to maybe 3 inches, whereas the southern part over 3 inches, in some places almost up to 6 inches. How does that compare to normal? Well, actually, it's not. For the southern part of the state, I would argue that it's pretty darn close to normal. The far right map puts this into the percent of what normally falls. And even though we see some greens and some very light yellows, that's all pretty much around 100%. So I would say, give or take, that's normal. It's that northern area that you saw on the previous slide highlighted with the U.S. Drought Monitor that is a bit lower. I mean, for a percent of normal, anywhere from 25 to 75% of normal. And something else I want to highlight here to help explain my recommendations to the national author for the Drought Monitor is you see that there's sort of like two lobes that are coming into Indiana. You have the one that's up in those northwestern counties, Lake, Porter, LaPorte counties. And then in some products, I can see a secondary lobe that kind of runs from Warren, Fountain County up to towards Fort Wayne. So one of my big challenges are, do we connect those two counties? Because I know that we had the dust storms at the end of last week, which obviously indicates some level of dryness, or do we treat those as two different lobes? Moving on to soil moisture, these are taken from the Purdue Mesonet sites around the state for both 4-inch and 8-inch. If these numbers don't mean a lot to you, they often don't mean a lot to me. A lot of times I just look for if it's close to 30%, then I know the ground is very wet because usually 30% is considered field capacity, and yet we even see some locations where it's more than that. So in the southern part of the state, you definitely see that. If it's getting close to 15% or less, then that's more the wilting point. Now, those farthest north locations, P-PAC and ASIL, those soils are incredibly sandy. So they look shockingly low, and they are low, but that's because of the type of soil. This next slide is a recent product that we have put out that shows what the 1 week change is in the soil moisture. So again, the map on the left is for the 4-inch depth. The map on the right is the 8-inch depth. And the key takeaway here is you see even the shading, it's a lot of warm colors, browner colors, and the values actually show how much it has changed. For most of the sites, you see a decline. So things had been drying out until the large amount of rain that we're receiving today and probably into tomorrow. Southern Indiana is probably going to see a little bit more over the next couple of days. But up until this whole rain event, the conditions were continuing to dry out. So this is what I have proposed to the national author. And again, and then when I email everyone and say, hey, please fill out your survey and tell me the impacts, that's because we do meet with a lot of partners around the state, usually in state government, Department of Natural Resources, Water, National Weather Service, etc. And you can see how I was torn with, do we go D1, which is considered moderate drought that connects those two lobes or not? I'm probably just going to leave it up to the national author, though I did just see Illinois did connect it on their side of the Illinois-Indiana border. So I wouldn't be surprised if the national author decided to connect that as well. Southern Indiana, because you guys keep getting so much rain, we're just going to say D nada is the phrase, meaning no drought, no even abnormally dry. Now moving on to the forecasts and the outlook. So just a couple more slides here to show. This is what the next 7-day precipitation totals have for us. And you can see that the majority of Indiana is looking at about around an inch. So once the big storm event passes through today, I think a lot of what you're seeing is probably remnants of that could carry over tomorrow. And then as I look day to day over that 7-8 day period, it seems like about a week from now. So at the end of this 7-day period, beginning of next week, we're expecting some more rain to come through, but the amounts are not going to be that high. So the good news, if you're not into this rain so much, is the rest of the week after this storm passes through, and certainly the weekend should be quite pleasant, particularly with it being a holiday weekend. For the outlooks, I'm showing in the top left the 6 to 10 day outlook, and then the bottom right is the 8 to 14. A lot of times when I send out my emails that I always intend to do weekly, it doesn't always come out every week. I just combine the two if they look really similar. So for both of those, the map on the left of the top row and the bottom row is showing what the confidence is regarding temperature. And because we're seeing a lot of blue and even like bullseye over Indiana, this is telling us that the models have consistent confidence that temperatures are going to be cooler than normal. That shading is indicating more the level of confidence we have and not how much cooler than normal we're anticipating conditions to be. But I did see in a 3 to 7 day hazards map that there are freeze concerns, not at all for Indiana, but for like the upper Michigan, upper peninsula, that area. So even though we aren't going to be freezing in that time, at least that's not what the forecast models are suggesting. That might give you some relative idea of how much chillier it's going to feel. And then the maps on the right are all about precipitation, again, shading indicating the amount of confidence the models are showing for either above or below. And it varies at the start of that 6 to 10 day period. Most of the state, there's at least some slight favoring of above normal precipitation. But by the end of that 2 week period, so the far bottom right image, it looks like most of the state we should be expecting near normal conditions. And then my final slide here, the monthly and seasonal outlook products were released last Thursday. So the top row is showing temperature and precipitation of what the models are predicting for June, for next month. And you can see that slightly favoring above normal temperatures, which seems to be the pattern most of the time. So that would be slightly confident that June will be warmer than what we experienced in the past. For precipitation, the eastern part of the state is slightly favored. In this case, where it's monthly and seasonal outlooks, when you see white shading, it doesn't mean we're expecting precipitation to be near normal. It just means if we ran 100 different model scenarios, it was pretty much evenly split between those that ended up saying it was going to be wetter than normal and those that said it was going to be drier than normal. So that's why it says equal chances. And so I will describe in my emails to you all, there's just no guidance that the models really could not settle one way or the other. And we see that as well in the bottom row for the June, July, August climate 3 month outlook, where with regards to precipitation, there just wasn't any sort of settling with the models. And sometimes what I wonder with that is we might get some very heavy precipitation events in the midst. So almost like sub-monthly scale, we could expect a lot of rain followed by not a lot of rain. And so when the models are trying to reconcile that, it ends up being gosh, sometimes it was heavy, sometimes it was not, and we just aren't going to side one way or the other. But temperature over the summer is slightly favoring for our area temperatures to be a little bit above normal. And you would say, well, wait, isn't every summer warmer than normal? Certainly with the climate change trends, yes. But if you look at that US map, you can see the Western US, a lot of confidence that the Western US, particularly the Great Basin area, is going to be much warmer. So maybe we should be grateful that there's not a lot of confidence for our area. So hopefully conditions will be near normal. That's my last slide. Are there any questions that anyone wants me to go over some more?
Do we have frost risk coming up? I saw some forecasts, low 40 degrees for Northwest Indiana. Spotty frost, maybe?
Yeah, I don't think in anywhere in Indiana we're going to see temperatures below 32. Now, of course, I said that, so I've just jinxed the whole thing. But seeing low temperatures in the low 40s, maybe upper 30s, I wouldn't be surprised about, particularly knowing that in lower Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, they're already anticipating freeze concerns in the 3 to 7 day hazard. So probably not in the next few days, but for them, maybe over the weekend. But I don't think Indiana is going to get that cold. I would be surprised if we even hit 35. And again, I know I just jinxed it.
Yeah, Phil, I one time had a frost on the 1st of July years ago. The temperature got down to 38 at the airport over in South Bend.
Oh, okay.
But in the muck ground, the low muck ground, it frosted, actually killed some corn. It was about probably about 4 or 5 foot tall. So you can get pockets like in the muck ground because that's where the cold air tends to collect.
Yeah.
Was that in 92?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've got growers that they don't plant their muck ground until about this time. So just because it's not unusual to have frost at this time of year for those spots.
Yeah. Microclimate, I guess I could see that in low-lying areas, but general overall, I don't anticipate it. Let's hope it doesn't
Okay.
happen.
Any further questions for Beth? Good discussion. Not hearing anything. So Beth, thank you again.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Appreciate you, everything you and Austin do for us. Next up, we'll switch over to agronomy, and I see Shaun's on. Shaun, can you? I'm sure you've had a few questions about sandblasting on the beans. What's going on?
Okay, there's probably another dozen pictures I can throw in here. I was literally just from yesterday's travels. So the dust storm, windstorms that came through Friday night across Indiana, and then earlier on Friday in Illinois. Certainly, my phone was getting blown up on Saturday with fields that are just looking pretty rough. And so, in particular, my rough estimate, I called Austin yesterday. I think he even put out a few counties in particular that they could guesstimate. But based on phone calls, Benton, White, Pulaski, Stark, LaPorte, kind of that area, that same northwest area that has been dry. You saw Beth's drought monitor. That's where it's been dry. That's actually where we've been pretty advanced on planting. If you recall the last few calls we've had, a lot of beans got in the ground earlier, mid-April's, a lot, looking really good. And then turned off dry. And so now we've got these fields that came through the dust storm, a windstorm. So images here, you got a stop sign that, I mean, they got so much dust on it that they had to wipe it down to see the stop sign. And some of the images I'll show you again. Sorry, I might overload you, but I was just dumping them in here. Some of the fields look like, oh, it's been drowned out, but no, it was just straight dust. In terms of these fields are more sandier in texture. There's some heavier ground that was, showed some issues as well. But let's kind of walk through this that came through, and it's field to field specific. You can see one in the foreground that's green here in the background. Sorry, in the foreground, definitely got blown over. It's almost like you can see winds of waves of soil and soot and everything else coming through silt. And it wasn't rain, it was just 60, 70 mile an hour winds from what I understand and coming through. So this field was planted mid-April. And so a lot of these mid-April fields, we've been able to get a good crop established. Looked beautiful last week. They were probably V1 to V2, depending on when in April they were planted. And so this is a field that was supposed to be V1 still, and it just got completely annihilated. So I'm going to hit the worst. Maybe I'll throw on a few more slides later after I get done talking as far as the ones that are okay. They look a little tattered, but this is definitely the worst case scenario. So you can start to see all the corn stalks that have come through, and that's not driven by water movement. That's driven straight by wind. I even throw in a cornfield here. You can see there on the bend, corn just taken out pretty strong. The good thing about the corn, I don't know if Dan's going to be on later, but growing points below ground still, these are V3, V4 type corn. So they'll turn around. It's not going to be great, but definitely have a better opportunity to recover than the soybeans do. As you look into this situation, we've got plenty of replants going on, and so the decision that needs to be made is, are these beans going to come out of it, or do we need to replant? And so some of them it's an easy kind of, yep, that whole field needs to be replanted. Others, if you see some green tissue, where do you see the green tissue? And so as we take a look at some of these, you can start to side in. Maybe let's get the laser going here. Come on. Laser, there we go. So you can start to side in. I mean, this is the row of beans that were V1, so one trifoliate that have just been peppered to the point that there's only the hypocotyl left. You can catch maybe a cotyledon here and there, but that whole field was to be V1. And again, you can track it. It's like, oh, that field needs to be planted. No, actually, if you track these lines, these 15-inch lines, those were just the hypocotyls that are left. And again, I haven't had a chance to do much animation, but you can see what's left is just these beans have completely been tattered. We'll advance through. You do see some spots that have the cotyledons are there. The growing point's certainly been taken out. The unifoliate's been taken out. Now, if the cotyledons are still there, they look rough right now. They're silt covered. You kind of want to look in there and say, do I have any green tissue? Do I have the auxiliary? So what ends up happening, if you're not familiar with this, soybeans growing point, it's above the ground at this point, right? It's at the point, it's at the top, the apical meristem growing up. If you burn that out, you can have deer eat it. In this case, sandblasting takes that out, then it'll release that apical dominance and then go to the next bud that's down and still living and green. And so in this case, most of these will split stem, was what I call it. And so you have two kind of main stems go off of the cotyledons because they're in the opposite position. Same thing would happen if you had the unifoliates there, they're in the opposite position. If it's just the top trifoliate, then we'll have a single stem that come out of it. I've got my knife here pointed because if you weren't looking close, you say, oh yeah, that soybean will come out of it. Well, this is actually a soybean right here that's completely covered with sand and silt. Okay, and that's not going to recover. We advance a little bit more as far as not quite as damaged, but still pretty damaged. We have the cotyledons that are live. And then within there, this is 3 days after the event, you do see some green tissue on the auxiliary. So they'll take over. Other cases, here you can tell that we've got the unifoliates are still pretty green, but 2/3 of the plant's covered up. And so it can probably recover. It's just going to take a while unless the rains that are coming today and tomorrow can wash that off to help get the green tissue. It's going to take a while. You think about any of the silt covered plants. So we go from the worst case where there's just stems, hypocotyls. Yeah, we got to replant. There's no growing point. There's no secondary. There's nothing. Versus, okay, we have some green areas, but they're silt covered. It's just like if you put a shade cloth over a tent or something, it's not getting sunlight, and so it's going to have a hard time growing. So that one side will eventually kind of come out of it, but it will be delayed. Here I was able to kind of do, here's the worst case scenario where these V1 soybeans just taken off all the way from the growing point to the first trifoliate, unifoliates, and the cotyledons. That's dead in her door now. Second one, you've got the cotyledons, they're just silt covered, but that's not going to do anything for you. And even here, now you have the first trifoliate, what's left of it, all of that, it's not going to recover, right? And so we've had a lot of those fields, thousands of acres to my estimate. I don't know how many, if we're going to 10,000 acres yet. But certainly I've got growers I've talked to that are replanting 1,200 acres. So there's quite a bit going on. Next door to this field, so the field I just showed you was worked last fall, is ripped, and then cultivated this last year, so had some more loose soil. Versus this field is VT'd, stale seed bed. So we do have some of that damage, but if you look back here near the windmills, this was planted maybe a week earlier, April 12th. These were V2 soybeans who have some areas that are hit pretty bad in this corner of the field. Green tissue's there. It's going to look rough, but they will recover. And so no need to do anything. Here's another example of, okay, taking out the first and second trifoliate and actually already have recovery off to the side with that one. Again, more basically, if you, from your eyesight, if you can see 3-4 days later enough green tissue to kind of row it, you're probably going to be fine. These fields are going to be fine, but it's okay. Is it the whole field? There's going to be spots. It's just like anything when we have standing water. Okay, how much of the field is hit? We've got sand ridges. We got pockets that need to be filled in. So there's going to be some of that if you're not familiar. I think that's all I had time to put in. So that's a hot topic one. I'll throw in a few more. Maybe I'll ask to jump back in to show you some of the next steps of progression. But that's what's hot right now. Replant at this point of the season, May 19th, May 20th. I have no reason to go super high population or change varieties and maturity groups. It's go ahead and get them replanted and go with that. If we've got these soybeans, normally we think of replant around 70,000, 80,000 plants. Yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger on a normal plant stand issue. If we've got 70,000, 80,000 plants and they're tattered, that might be a different choice. I might decide to go and pull the trigger a little bit sooner if it's 80 or 90,000. They're all really tattered, so it's field to field specific. But get out there, take a look at that. I think we can have recovery on these. I think it's the in between ones we're going to have the main questions on what to do. Otherwise, the rest of the state, the rest of things going on in the soybean world, it's just okay. Take a look at how our herbicides are holding on. I've seen a lot of fields that are breaking in terms of weed control, so be mindful of that as we move in advance. So be happy answering other questions, and again, I'll throw a few more pictures up to see not as bad but still tattered soybeans. So questions?
But now we got the rain. But I mean, is there a little bit of wait and see, or not get in a hurry, or if you're not seeing it now, go after it?
Yeah, so normally in these kind of events, I'd like to wait 3 or 4 days to kind of see if we're going to have regrowth, but we should be able to walk the fields. I mean, this is 4 days out now. Certainly got the rain. I haven't shown the other pictures of the fields I walked yesterday. You can see enough of the fields to say, okay, here's the spot that's definitely it has not recovered. I don't see the glint of green. I need to go ahead and drop in. So we're at a point now. If the fields are fit to get equipment in, I'd say go ahead and go, and then you can make that choice. The rain that comes today and potentially tomorrow help freshen up what's there, knock any silt-covered leaves, silt off the leaves, but then also get that chance of regrowth. And then you should be able to say, okay, yeah, I need to go and drop in. This is also going to be those fields that are I call the Swiss cheese. It's going to be you're going cross-eyed. The farmer is going to be going cross-eyed whether to drop or not drop and make that decision. So some of those fields are like you have to drop and go. Others like I'm going to lift up. You're driving back and forth and driving yourself crazy. But eventually you just have to call the ball and run with whatever part of the field that you can.
Thanks again, Shaun. Appreciate everything you do.
Yep.
Marguerite, our hemp specialist. Marguerite, you have any updates for us?
Good morning. I have brief updates, but we were able to get our trials in yesterday out at the agronomy farm. It went pretty smoothly, and hopefully this rain really helps the plants germinate and get out of the ground. I know at least one of our fiber growers in the state got planted about 4 days ago, up near Fort Wayne, and then I'll hear back on Friday about one of our other grain growers on if he got in, but I think he did as well. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with the sort of sandblasting issue that Shaun saw, since I don't think anybody was in the ground at that point. So, a little bit slow to start, but it looks like things are on track now for us at least. CBD growers, most of them have stuff started in greenhouses or indoors, and they'll transplant in June or beginning of July. So that's nothing to, really to worry about at this point. And then we still have people applying for licenses, mostly CBD growers at this point. I think we're up to about 400 acres of registered hemp that should be going in the ground. But that's kind of where I'm at with an update. I'll have more to share and some photos the next update. Thanks.
So, Christian, could you give us an insect update, please?
So on the insect update, this won't be a long one, but I did want to focus people in and reconnect with some of the degree day topics that I had focused on earlier, and check in with our sort of laundry list of pests here as to where we are. And you remember about a month ago, we were talking quite a bit about seed corn maggot. And if you can see that, I'm putting up the growing degree days for seed corn maggot. The reason I'm putting this up, Shaun was talking about replanting soybeans. Other people are still planting corn and beans. We are well past the fly-free period. See that 781 degree days pupation fly-free period begins, and you look at the map of Indiana here, you can see we're well past that. No more worrying about seed corn maggot. Okay, another one we talked about was alfalfa weevil. That's still ongoing. You look up at the top here, peak larval feeding 575. So what I want to highlight on this one is the dramatic differences between the southern third of Indiana and the northern third. We're almost double the degree days in south versus north. So down in the south, those larvae are done, likely gone, etc. And in the northern, northern tiers of counties where we probably have more alfalfa concentration, we could still find them feeding and still justify treating them. The last one I wanted to talk about, because this one was surprising to me, was Japanese beetle. And we know that this is a larval pest, but more so in past years at least, a pest of corn at R1 and clipping silks and things like that. And sometimes in soybeans on field edges, you'll see them defoliate pretty well. But I was just astounded to see that already here, we're on May 21st, in southern Indiana, we're already at adults begin emerging at 10:30 degree days. That's crazy. To think about adult Japanese beetle emerging before the end of May is just is pretty. If you've been doing it a while, like I have, about years of observing them here in Indiana, it's quite uncommon to see them popping this soon. It's not anything to I'm not trying to freak anybody out, just letting people know that we have accumulated some pretty warm days as we've all lived through. And before you know it, we'll be talking about Japanese beetle defoliation. And is it a big Japanese beetle year? Is it not? That all remains to be seen. But the central message I wanted to put across is that because of the warm days and therefore warm soils, the risk to replanted soybeans and things like that, things that are going into the ground in the next, let's say, 10 days, are pretty minimal as far as insect pests, as far as slug pests go, because it's just not the conditions that favor them. They've moved into a different life stage. They've pupated. They are just not, these aren't hospitable conditions for that suite of pests. So, and on the other hand, it is hospitable conditions in general for seed germination and plant growth. So we're out of the woods for that whole suite of what we call early season pests, and I include slugs in there. So that's all I had. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, Christian. See, we're still seeing a lot of weevil up here in northern Indiana. It is they're pretty thick this year.
Yeah.
Christian,
Yes.
where does Asiatic garden beetle fit into that? Because we get feeding on that on the.
Oh yeah, good question. Nobody has a model, at least not an online model for the Asiatic garden beetle, but they are definitely still out there and feeding. I have a colleague who's working with them in mint in northern Indiana, where we grow a lot of mint. So they're still going strong, and I would expect corn that is planted in those few areas where Asiatic garden beetle is a pest, those sandy soils, to be at risk. And a reminder for anybody that doesn't recall, the only thing that we've seen that really gives us some control of Asiatic garden beetle in corn is liquid bifenthrin. The seed treatments, even the high rate of seed treatment, so that's your Poncho 1250, also called the rootworm rate, doesn't provide reliable control. It's better than nothing, so it was what they used to call suppression. But it's not something that you could bank on. So the individuals, farmers that are dealing with that, the ones that I know of, are putting liquid bifenthrin in there. Have you heard anything about Asiatic garden beetle yet this year?
Oh,
Bryan?
I haven't, but I know it's always an issue in our sands.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're still out there. The fields where long-term we've been working on this mint corn rotation, they're still there, and there are lots of them, and they survived the winter okay, and they're feeding and all that. So I would expect that that's still the case in most of those fields that we all are familiar with.
Move on to Lyndon Kelley talking about irrigation. We've got some places up here in northern Indiana that are getting dry again.
Yeah, it's interesting how diverse we work, and I work both Michigan and Indiana, and both states have sort of a dry pocket and maybe a suitable to wet pocket. As far as irrigation this early in the season, most of us think about using irrigation to help get things started, and we've talked before about some articles that are out there that your growers may benefit, but putting on a half an inch of water to incorporate a herbicide or help germinate a crop sometimes makes a huge 100 to 1 investment, a return on the dollar. So those articles are up there. There's a new article about irrigation and herbicides, talking about both how we can make better use of the herbicides that we have there on irrigation and have a return from our herbicides, be a greater amount of money per dollar of herbicides. So that goes into a little bit about justification of using irrigation, but also about how to use irrigation to maximize that herbicide. There's a new article, was supposed to be to you this morning, but I have a wheat specialist that wanted to add a couple paragraphs. So watch for small grain and forage late season irrigation. Those crops have been using about an inch and a half of water a week, and we haven't been getting an inch and a half of water in almost any place that we've worked. Because of that, if they're chopping that for feed, which is pretty common in these irrigated fields that are contracted feed growers, when they've chopped those, they may not have suitable moisture anywhere in the top 30, 36 inches to germinate a crop. So one of the more common questions is, how much water do I need to add before I seed my forage silage corn or whatever they're planting to, soybeans or silage corn are the two that I've seen this week. So that is addressed in that article that's there. And then if we do get this great rain that's supposed to happen, it's an excellent time for farmers to repair their equipment and get ready for the time when the rain doesn't meet the need. And so there's an article up there about sort of a checklist of inspection and repairs that just don't forget to do these things. When I talk to people about early season irrigation and benefits, and we're out there in the field, and a lot of times they'll say, I knew I should have applied a half an inch of water, but I wasn't ready. I couldn't get to it quick enough. And the only thing I can say is help remind people about when irrigation needs come, when you need that equipment, it's got to be able to run. And the only thing we can do on that is try to get someone checking it out, making sure it's ready to run before that happens. Any questions I can help with, please get a hold of me.
Were there many systems that got turned over during the wind the other day, Lyndon?
So, I've heard of only a couple. The previous storm that we had us be the sort of the highlight of the nation. We had crews coming from Arkansas, Nebraska, all over the United States to help out put up equipment during May. That this last turnaround, although unfortunate for the people that had damage, didn't seem to do near as much as that early May storm did. So the early May storm, there was damage from Traverse City, Michigan, all the way down in just spots where we were tipped over irrigation equipment.
Thank you, Lyndon. Let's see. We've got Bryan Overstreet would like to say a word or two here today.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone, you should have gotten an email from me last week about the 3-day soil health training that's coming up here in June. We've got several open spots yet. It may put you on the waiting list because the extension side may be open or full, but we've got other spots we can fill. So it's other than travel, it's a free program. It starts on a Monday afternoon and goes till Thursday late afternoon that week, the 9th of June. And if you've had any soils class before, you qualify, even if you haven't had our prerequisites on our soil health classes. And we'll also be putting together a Agronomy 101 class again this year. We're doing it in 3 locations, the week of the 21st, I think, of July. You'll be seeing more about that coming up, but we'll be doing Acre on Monday, NEPAC on Wednesday, and CPAC, the one over east, on Friday that week. So we'll be doing 3 classes that week of that. So if anybody's interested in doing that, just a update will be, those will be coming up soon. So thank you, Jeff, for letting me have a minute to talk about those.
Thank you, Bryan. I did receive a note from Dan Quinn. He wanted me to mention that the big issue, of course, this week for him and corn has been the sandblasting Friday. And he mentioned that there were surrounding counties up to the north of Lafayette were pretty much the big target for that. Most of that corn was the growing point was below the soil surface or right at it, and probably was not damaged. Soybeans probably took a bigger hit than than the beans. The rain this week and the next couple of days should really help that kind of pop back up again. So he was pretty optimistic about that, the health of the corn crop there. I've also received a note from Tommy. Tommy Butts, our weed specialist. He mentioned that weeds, pretty much the same story he's been preaching lately. Get the residuals out there for the weed control later, that sort of thing. He's been getting some calls about annual ryegrass that apparently is resistant to glyphosate, Roundup. And in his experience, the ALS inhibitors like Accent and Steadfast have been kind of plus or minus misses for the control. So ryegrass in corn is becoming a challenge. And if you run across something, I think he'd probably like to know that there's issues popping up here and there around the state. He said maybe if the corn is a dual stack that's got Liberty and glufosinate in it, that could probably be a place where you might be able to get some control for this resistant ryegrass. So just keep that in mind as educators. If you get calls about patches of ryegrass that seem to be surviving, give Tommy a call. Looks like we've got some work to do on that. So I was going to ask if Joe Becovitz from our state chemist office has anything to report. I know I've received a couple of phone calls just yesterday. I had 3 telephone calls yesterday from commercial tomato growers that had 2,4-D apparently drift into greenhouses and accumulate there. 3 different growers from 3 different parts of LaGrange County. So it's tilting season.
Wonderful to hear that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Actually, I appreciate it. I do have a couple of things to talk about. Just wanted to make you aware, we are just starting a 2-year remodeling project within our office because it's been a long, long time since we've done any work on our labs and any work in the office, and the office has grown. So we spent all of last week moving our offices to the basement of Ag Administration building on campus, while our old space is being remodeled over the next 2 years. Luckily, I haven't had an office in there for quite some time, and I work from home, luckily for me. So that hasn't upset my apple cart too much. But what's important to you to know is our address is the same, our phone numbers are the same, but don't show up at our old office expecting us to be there. And I know some of you sometimes drop in because you won't find anything there but construction crews. So look for us in the bottom of Ag Administration. To sort of piggyback on what Jeff said about complaints, we are definitely heading into the meat of complaint season. We had 10 drift complaints last week that we took. That's probably not our peak yet. We probably won't peak. June will be a mess like it always is, and that's when we're usually getting 15, 20, maybe 25 complaints a week. Just know that for every complaint that, or every call, I'll say, that actually becomes a complaint, we're probably talking to 2, 3, or 4 people because I'm sure, as you all know, anytime someone sees anybody making some kind of herbicide application, ag is the big one that gets pointed at a lot just because they have big giant sprayers, but lawn care works, right away works. And then one of their plants wilts, they immediately attempt to blame it on pesticides, herbicides. So when we get people that call up and tell us, as we had, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that they had one raspberry bush it was a magnolia. They had a magnolia tree that dropped all of its blooms, and they had one branch on a peach tree that died and didn't look right. And, we all know those two things don't really add up to drift. For one thing, it was a point in time where magnolia trees should have been dropping their blooms because they were pretty much done blooming at that time where this person was. And again, one branch on a tree, we should be seeing injury across the vegetation on their property. And of course, the classic is it's worse next to the field and lessens as you move away from the suspected target field. So when we get situations like that, we enlist extension's help. If there's somebody in the county or if they're willing, and we've done this over the years. So my first shout out of the year is for Brittany Bertram, who was willing to go out and take a look at that complaint. And imagine that when I attempted to connect her up with this guy, he suddenly vanished and wouldn't return her phone calls and wouldn't return my phone calls. So that particular call did not develop into a complaint. I'm not sure why he turned turtle on us all of a sudden, but she was willing to go out there and take a look. But he would never return her phone call and set up a time when she could do that. So know that we've got a complaint form on the pesticide page of our website. There are detailed instructions that are connected to that complaint form that we hope possible complainants will read through before they fill out the complaint form, so they can do that online on our webpage. They can also call us. The number for complaint intake is 765-637-6678. And I have sent the complaint form and the attached instructions to Jeff via email just a couple of minutes ago. So if he sees fit, or if any of you would like that, feel free to distribute it to whoever would want it, Jeff. And that's all I have, unless somebody has questions.
Any questions for Joe Becovitz? Okay, Joe, thank you so much. Appreciate State Chemist having a rep with us and getting us updated. One comment. Elysia couldn't be with us today, and regarding forages, a lot of hay's been taken off up here in northern Indiana. I'm sure they're pretty much done with it down in southern Indiana, but right after that hay's cut, that alfalfa's cut, that's a great time of the year to be putting on the first dose of fertilizer. Usually they split the applications after spring, the spring cutting and the summer cutting. So good time of year to do that sort of thing. Scott Gabbard, I see you're on. Do you have any updates from Purdue on the Farm?
Morning, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. Quick update is that tomorrow we have our second round of the pre and early season training that will be coming up. Also, too, is that Bryan already mentioned it. We have that Ag 101 to July 21st, 23rd, and 25th at Acre, NEPAC, and CPAC. Tomorrow's training will be from 1 to about 3 o'clock, probably actually more like 2:30. So this is kind of like the last go around for that. Some things we've been doing in the background for everyone is that Brad Sewell and I've worked on trying to automate some of the responses for folks. And so it's a little different this year when people start entering their information and work with their farmers. So be aware of that. And then also on the box drive is that you all have your individual link to click on. And so what will happen is that once you start filling out your field information, everything, that Brad's going to turn that right around. And so the next time when you log in for your early season, mid and late, that several fields will pre-populate for you, unlike in previous years. So testing that out, trying to make some things easy for everyone. It also makes a little bit quicker day to turn around the back end. So the other thing too is that would like for everyone to, of course, get their information in timely too, because we're going to start doing data polls in the middle of the cropping season too, to potentially assess Dan, Darcy, and Shaun and their efforts as well. Also on September 3rd and 4th, last year, about that same time, we hosted the tri-state on the farm type training up at NEPAC, and this year Ohio State will be hosting. So I would ask folks that are with the Purdue on the Farm team if they would make sure that they have those dates held out so they can participate if at all possible coming up the first week of September. So with that, that's all I got, except for we do have every other week the office hours have been posted to on everyone's calendars for either drop in, and sometimes, of course, we'll have some faculty and other members to give more complete updates during those opportunities as well. So thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Scott.